So the session today is titled How to Implement an AP Automation Solution for Your Remote Workforce in Just Days. My name is Nicole Schmeida. I'm the marketing specialist here at DocuWare, and I'll be moderating the few polls and Q&As that we'll have during this webinar. The main presenter today will be Sal Maldonado. He's the Inside Sales Director at DocuWare. Before we jump into the presentation, I want to let everyone know this session is being recorded. Later today, I'll email you a link to the recording, the slides, and some handouts. In your GoToWebinar panel right now, you can see there's some handouts you can download that include a product flyer, a DocuWare platform brochure, a recent case study, and an AP automation ebook. As we go along through the session today, feel free to type in your questions in the question box and we'll get to them at the end. And once the webinar ends today, please complete the short survey that will pop up on your screen. You can see the agenda now. The first third of the session, Sal will go over, what is DocuWare for Invoice Processing? What are the benefits you can receive when using it? Then he'll go into a live demo. This is an introductory first look at the solution, and at the end, we'll open it up for some live Q&A. I have a question for you before we get into the product slides. So, how's your workspace looking today? How's your, it's the end of the year. How's your sanity? We have a poll question for you that we want to hear from you and get your feedback on. So I'm actually going to launch a poll question now. You'll see it on your screen. It says, how do you carry out your invoice processing now? Maybe you don't have any procedures in place. You kind of just do them and don't, just get them done. You don't really have any steps like written down. You do have procedures, but right now it's only paper-based. You're only working with paper invoices. Maybe you have a mix of manual paper and digital procedures, but the digital procedures, maybe they're still manual. Or you're already using some form of automated digital workflows. Maybe you're curious to see, what does DocuWare have to offer? How can DocuWare, level you up in that area? Or if you have any other responses, feel free to type them in the question box now. I'm just going to wait a few more seconds till we get majority responses here. So let's see, I see the votes coming in. And then once I close it, I will share the responses so we can see, everyone on the line, what they're doing with their invoice processing right now. All right, let's see, I got some majority here, so I'm going to close it now and share the results. So it looks like majority of people have some mixture of manual paper and digital procedures in place. Maybe you have like the invoices coming in via email and you still maybe manually route them with email notifications, but it's not automated. So we do see some people that have automated it. Some are still with only paper-based. So we're glad everyone's on the line. We're glad to show you, what can DocuWare offer you in terms of AP automation. So I'm going to go back to my presentation here. Just have a quote for you that I thought was interesting. So it's a quote from the executive editor at the Institute of Finance and Management, recently from a October 2021 CFODive.com article. He's saying AP people, they're not just paying the bills anymore. They're the experts, cash managers, data analytics, last line of defense of fraud. So this solution is just, to equip you to do the best you can with your job. Let's remove those remote tasks, manual tasks that can be automated, and really put in the best fit solution to solve your company's challenges. So with that now, I'm going to pass it off to Sal. So here you go, Sal.
Thank you for that, Nicole, and thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. We do really appreciate it. Once again, my name is Sal Maldonado, and I'm the Inside Sales Director for DocuWare. Those of you who are not familiar with us, we've actually been around for about 30 years now, specializing in various ways to help companies with document management and simplifying their day-to-day work efforts. And today we're going to be spending a little time introducing one of our more popular cloud infrastructure solutions geared towards invoice processing. And over the last 30 years, we kind of realized that there seems to be a major trend when it comes to AP and invoice processing. No matter how small or how large the organization may be, even if you only have one person within your accounts and payable department or multiple departments and/or satellite offices, there seems to be a trend with the same issues and pitfalls that account payable departments are facing. Also, there seems to be a lot of these issues related to paper invoices and all the problems that come along with that as well. Your team can spend obviously a good amount of time on their data entry, wasting time finding related documents to make a decision, or waiting on fellow employees to make an approval process that can sometimes act as a bottleneck for closing out transactions. And more importantly, all of this adds up to what most people have issues with when dealing with paper is fulfilling an audit or gathering information for any type of reporting down the road. In addition, we hope to share some of the ways that DocuWare can become, honestly, a centralized location for all of your documents. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on invoice processing, some of the ways that we can make invoicing, capturing, and data collection much easier, giving your team visibility as to where documents currently stand within the system. But we hope this is going to be a stepping stone and allow us to sort of offer some of the ways we can help with other documents outside of accounts payable as well. But the key thing is, with this approach and using our cloud infrastructure solution, companies can significantly change the way that they process invoices, not only helping your team stay organized, but adding a layer that allows your team to take advantage of workflows that cut down on time and energy, and also make it easier for your team to get a clear picture as to where an invoice currently sits in the process and what type of decisions need to be made for your team internally. One of the things that we want to stress during today's call as well is that all of this sort of adds up to not only time saving, but also cost saving. So today, we're going to give you access to a calculation tool that we feel is a really good exercise. Obviously, we have it set on our physical webpage, but following this demonstration, we can also send you a direct link. But we do encourage you to take a stab at filling this out, and you'd be surprised how much time and energy your team normally spends executing and dealing with invoice processing. And during today's demonstration, we're hoping to focus on some of the key ways that our cloud infrastructure solution can help your team. First and foremost is manual data entry, by far the biggest time hole for a lot of AP offices. What we find is typically teams are spending a lot of their time and effort entering the same information over and over again. More importantly, it's really easy to make an accident, enter in the wrong data, or even worse, make a duplicate copy of that same invoice, making it difficult for your team to stay on track. With DocuWare, however, we can leverage what is known as OCR technology, which essentially stands for optical character recognition. This tool allows your team to automatically collect the relevant data from your invoices and ensures that that data is being filed away in the proper location so fellow team members can find down the road as well. We've also gone one step further where we can essentially help by collecting information that helps your team with approval processes for those invoices. So setting up complex workflows that can pay attention to the vendor, the dollar amount, or the person's responsible for reviewing that invoice internally, all within an automated system in the cloud as well. And lastly, and by far the most important, is the ability to secure your data. I think it's safe to say that most of us who are dealing with paper invoice and documentation, it's easy to get things lost. Even more challenging, many years down the road to fulfill an audit by looking for information that you no longer can find in your filing system or was actually accidentally thrown out for any particular reason. With DocuWare, however, we can easily store all of your information in a secure filing location and give you a number of ways to easily find your data, maybe by a document name, vendor name, PO numbers, invoice numbers, including date ranges as an example. With this intuitive search, we hope that this can not only make it easier for your team to navigate your documents on a day-to-day, but also fulfill that type of reporting, such as an audit, which is super important for many companies. As we go through today's demonstration, I am going to be touching on some of the key elements within the live demo, but I also want to really stress that this system provides you with a turnkey approach. The features and all of the workflows that I'll be introducing today come as a default part of the system. And after a very short implementation cycle, your team can actually be up and running in days. And that's really important when you think about adopting and putting a new piece of software within any company, which is something that we really stress during this process. And of course, today we're just going over a really short presentation. We want to spend most of our time actively looking at the live demonstration. So we're going to be going into a Q&A if anyone has questions up to this point. But I do want to mention that all of the features that I'm introducing today, we're going to be using our cloud infrastructure, that online 24/7 access, but all of the same bells and whistles are also available for the on-premise solution as well. We realize that certain industries, depending on your organization and what type of business that you're in, may have the requirements where they need on-premise. So just keep that in mind. Even though we're demoing a cloud system, we can also have the same functionality within an on-premise application as well. So with that, Nicole, I'll pass it over to you to take any questions before we jump into the live demonstration.
All right, thanks, Sal. Yeah, we just wanted to take a break. Let's see if any questions have come in so far. I'm looking at the questions. Looks like none so far, so looks like we're good. But I guess as we go through the demo and wrap up, we can definitely answer any questions during the Q&A. So I think we're good to move forward with the demo. Oh, actually, one question popped in. Can OCR read handwriting? That's an interesting question.
That's a great question. The short answer, I'm going to say, is no. And the reason for that is simply due to a person's handwriting illegibility, let's just say. If a doctor's writing something on a note, I don't think our OCR is going to read it. If someone like myself, I tried really hard to write neatly and correctly, then obviously the OCR can have a better job of picking that up. But most of the time, especially as we go through today's demonstration, it is going to be focused on text and not handwritten information as well.
All right, thank you. Thanks for that question.
All right, so we can jump into the demo in that case?
Yes.
All righty, and can you still see my screen, Nicole?
Yep, we're
Perfect.
looking at the DocuWare system.
Fantastic. So now we're going to jump over, as I said, to the live demo. And as we mentioned, keep in mind, today is just a really high-level introduction to some of the basics and the fundamentals behind the invoice processing tool. Of course, if you have any particular questions and you want to learn how this can work for your team in particular, we can always set up a one-on-one session following today's demonstration. To start, you'll notice that we're looking at a web page for the cloud system. So as long as your team has a Windows operating device with internet connection, they're able to go to work. You'll also notice that it's a really streamlined and easy to view screen. DocuWare put a lot of time and effort into making this user-friendly and incredibly intuitive. What we find is that employees can adopt to this type of solution a lot quicker and a lot easier, which saves time and energy so they can start using it from day one. Here on the left-hand side, this is where your team will navigate throughout the application, accessing their records, sharing their documents with others. And as you can see here on the top, we have some clearly defined labels to help your team understand where information is located at any time. You'll also notice each time someone double-clicks on a particular record, no matter what view they're currently on, they have a visual of the document here on the right-hand side. And this is something that we feel is super important because it helps with the integrity of your data management. So instead of pulling this document off the cloud and saving it to my local machine, I can always actively see what I want to work on here on the right-hand side, but there's no need to download it and actually remove it from its originally filed location. In addition to that, here in the center, we also have some basic functions to help your team manage documents on the day-to-day. So at any time, they can easily edit, they can print it out, they can download it, they can even email it directly from the DocuWare cloud to one of their vendors and/or contacts, all within the system. In addition to that, we also have the ability to annotate, essentially to mark up a document with any type of notes, comments, maybe highlight something, making it easy to communicate with your team all digitally within the cloud itself. The best part about this markup feature is not only helps your team stay organized and in contact with each other, but it also stays there indefinitely. So if I backtrack a record a few years down the road, I can maybe use all of those comments and notes to give a little more context as to what happened on that record, which can be really helpful come audit time as well. Lastly, if you ever need to send this out, back out to the vendor, back out to a customer or a third party, we have a few different ways where we can simply remove all of those annotations. So in the event that you want to send it out, you can send a blank copy so they don't see any internal communication or comments that your team may have made on the document. To start, I do want to stress how easy DocuWare makes it to import or bring invoices into the cloud system. And we do that by utilizing something called a document tray here on the top left-hand side. A document tray is a really easy way for your team to understand and identify where records belong as they invoice, or rather import new invoices. You'll notice I have a few example trays already set up, some by department. I have a few set up by record type and one for a particular project. But keep in mind, this is just a demonstration, so these are examples on some of the ways that it can be used. During the implementation process, we get a better feel for your key terms, your internal language, and essentially help your team understand where records should be imported within the cloud. Once these are established, we also make it incredibly easy to physically bring documents and invoices into the system. This includes something as simple as a drag and drop by taking a record and putting it right into the tray. We can also import. So if you did have an existing drive, any type of filing network system, you can easily point to that, pull the document in that way. We also have the ability to scan, essentially making a direct connection between your in-office scanner right to one of these document trays. And lastly, and I would say by far the most highly used feature, is the ability to connect to email domains or platforms. In this example, I'm using something from Outlook, but as you can see at the very top right-hand side, I have a dedicated DocuWare plugin. This allows me to essentially move records right from my system directly into the DocuWare tray. As you can see, I have a store button. Once I hit that, it's going to move the document and populate it, as you see here, in an individual record ready to route to the next step. Again, this is just a really high-level introduction to these features. There's a lot of other bells and whistles we can add to help with automation and simplifying this process. Once a record is stored in a given document tray, as you see here, the next step is then storing it in a secure filing location. In that case, when I double-click on a particular document, I now have this store button available here on the right-hand side. My team can easily select that and see a drop-down listing of multiple locations that they can store this record in. Keep in mind that we can have a lot of permission controls within these particular filing cabinets. So if you wanted to maybe restrict what individuals have access to this filing cabinet, restrict what type of records can or cannot be edited, or simply lock down an entire filing cabinet if you want to have it only available for C-level or particular people on your organization. All of that is something we can customize. However, before we go and save this particular invoice, I do want to introduce a few features that really help with the invoice processing element and automate a lot of these steps that we're going to be reviewing today. And as I mentioned during our PowerPoint, we leverage something called OCR, that optical character recognition. So each and every time you store a record in a given filing cabinet, our OCR tool will identify that information on the page and read the data as it gets stored. That makes it much easier down the road to search for your information in various ways, which we can look at in just a second. But more importantly, DocuWare went one step further. And what we've done is created a piece of technology, is essentially a form of AI and machine learning that we called intelligent indexing. What this tool does, it actually starts to remember what invoices your team is consistently entering over and over again. And more importantly, what data or information on the invoice is important to your team. The idea behind this is as your team goes to save records into the storage location, we will fulfill data entry. And here's an example of what that looks like. If I take the WB Mason that I have currently sitting in my document tray, and then I move it over into the proper filing location, in this case, accounts payable. Once I make that selection, you'll notice here on the left-hand side, all this information was automatically populated. The indexing tool remembered the vendor, the type of document. Keep in mind, I'm using an invoice for this. However, we can train other record types as well. It doesn't only have to be an invoice. And then on the left-hand side, it remembers the data that I routinely collect and put all of the fields with the right information here on the left-hand side. Using this feature, as you can imagine, this will dramatically cut down on the time and energy for data entry, but it also can significantly limit the number of human error mistakes, entering the wrong dollar amount, mislabeling someone's name or putting in the wrong character, and more importantly, misfiles, maybe having something saved in the wrong vendor location and or having a duplicate that's floating around the office as well. Not only does this help with simplifying and streamlining your data entry, but we can also make changes on the fly. So for example, I'm going to delete the invoice number here on the left-hand side. And where it's located over here on the right, on the very top of the page, normally your team would use their keyboard to key in values, so 1527 and so on. Instead, however, with DocuWare, we have another really useful tool that's called one-click indexing. So instead of keying it with your keyboard, you can instead use your mouse. You can hover over that section, you're going to highlight that block of information, and then you're going to let it go. And I'm not sure if anyone caught that, but the information was repopulated there on the left-hand side. So not only does this help me, again, continue to collect data easily, quickly, and accurately, but it also works on any other screen. So even if something is saved and already stored within a given filing cabinet, you can still make adjustments by using this feature, which also streamlines the process down the road. In this case, I'm happy with all of the data that we've collected so far on this invoice, and I can simply hit the Store button. Once I do that, a few things are going to happen. Number one, the record is now removed from the document tray and stored in the appropriate filing location under that vendor's file. In addition to that, it's going to remember all of the values that I keyed in. So the next time it sees that W. Mason invoice, it's going to automatically track to the proper locations and collect that necessary data. And lastly, it initiated a workflow. And really, this is where DocuWare shines, because the idea behind this process is to help your team streamline their decision-making, but also give everyone clarity as to where the invoice currently stands and what decisions need to be made. We have a few different workflows that are sort of standard or default within the system, but of course, keep in mind, we can personalize this. So if you ever had to make adjustments, we can include that as part of the overall workflow build out as well. To start, I want to help everyone understand the workflow screen that we're looking at now. On the top left-hand side of this box, you can easily see what task or assigned invoices were given to that particular user. Once they go through the training process, they'll also get a better understanding of reading left to right all of the information that's indicated for this invoice. But the key thing is, as a person responsible for this particular WB Mason invoice, instead of having my team members email me, shoot me a message, instead I've received a physical task alert, notifying me that there's an action item for this particular invoice that I'm responsible for. More importantly, as I just shown, once you double click on the record, I now have a visual of the WB Mason invoice I have to make a decision on here on the right-hand side. So I don't need to go looking through my records or pulling it up from my desk or a physical piece of paper copy. Instead, it's sitting in its original location, and I can simply view it to make a decision. And finally, here at the bottom is where most of the steps occur with our workflows. But the first thing I would like to note is our geocoding chart collection here in the center of the page. You'll notice that not only did we collect all of the relevant information for the vendor, the dollar amounts, the invoice number, but we also use this OCR and intelligent indexing tool to collect and automate our geocoding collection. This includes our dollar amounts, our geocoding accounts, and our cost centers. Once again, this is just an example of some of the ways that we can build this out, but I'm sure you can envision this dramatically cuts down the time and energy when it comes to invoice processing, because your team can rely on this automation to fulfill the same repetitive information that you find on an invoice. Lastly, on the far left-hand side, we also have some additional options to either A, complete this process, which we're going to do in just a moment. If I had to recheck this invoice, maybe I have someone on my team that send this out to me. So I'm sending it back to them because there's a discrepancy on the invoice and they need their assistance. I also have two options from requesting new to invoice rejected that I can actually send directly to my vendor contact. DocuWare will incorporate the physical WB Mason invoice I'm referring to, and I can draft the reasoning as to what my concern or issue is, and it'll send it out from DocuWare directly to my contact. And then lastly, which I find super helpful for a lot of accounts payable teams, is the ability to put this invoice on hold. In many cases, some organizations are waiting on secondary pieces of information before they can make a decision on an invoice. So rather than filing this away and letting it fall through the cracks for the most part, instead I can set a date that gives me a reminder once I receive that particular information. In addition to that, here on the center of the page below this, your team members can get a clear picture as to not only the information already collected during the storage process, but more importantly, letting them get a clear picture as to what workflow this particular invoice is currently sitting on. The reason that this is important is because DocuWare has a number of default stock workflows built into our invoice processing tool. So for example, the one that we're referring to today using this WB Mason invoice is for our recurring fixed expenses. So we came up with something called Quick Match. Quick Match essentially allows you at the very top, when you think about the vendor master file, to essentially give a pre-approved dollar amount. In this case, anything below the value of $1,000 is pre-approved given the fact that this is reoccurring. The key thing with this is we can set up flexibility behind each and every vendor. So if we obviously have different dollar amounts in different situations, we can build that out as part of the workflow. At this point, I'm happy. I have all of the information I need for this particular vendor. I have my dollar amount in the center. Everything looks good, so I can simply hit the confirm button. Once I do that, you'll notice that I confirm that and approve that particular invoice. It's no longer an action item for me under my task view, and it's now stored away in a different location, which we'll just look at in just a few moments, where I can send that data over to my account processing software as well. Once again, I did mention that we have a number of workflows already built within the system. The one that we just reviewed was by far, I would say, one of our more popular options, but we do have another that's really geared towards larger organizations, especially who have some form of invoice matching. To do that, I'm going to demonstrate it using a US Steel invoice here on the right-hand side. And as you can see, this is a much larger dollar amount than we just reviewed. So therefore, we set up a rule with this vendor. What that means is that this vendor requires a three-way match, which allows the workflow to go out and look for any type of related documents to this invoice. In this case, a purchase order and a packing slip. Using the center tab now, you'll notice that we have an additional option here at the bottom for related and a three-way match document view. So once your team members select that, it'll pull up an additional tab and give them a clear picture of all of the other documents related to this invoice currently saved within the filing cabinet. So rather than having your team maybe reach out to a different department, go through the filing cabinet themselves, email fellow team members for clarity as to what they're looking for, instead they use this one button that allow the system to pull up all of those documents related to that invoice and give them a clear view before they can make a decision. The three-way match that we're referring to can also be applied to a two-way match and/or a four-way match. Again, that customization is a big deal. We can easily personalize it for your company. In addition to that, I do want to mention we have other workflows that are related to the approver process. As we look at this tab, you can see I have an approver section with a little lock there. What that means is that this system already has this particular, actually let me go back here to US Steel, this particular vendor has a team member that's working on this processing. So once I make this request, it's going to go over to that team member and allow them to do their process as we're looking at here today. However, we can also set it where this is flexible, or you can choose what approvers that you want as part of the workflow each and every time you actually execute a workflow approval process. It's totally up to you. We can do either or. We can automate the approval process through and through. So as soon as you store it, the right people in the chain get their alerts and go through their process. Or we can set it based on a request where maybe there's a particular situation, a certain dollar amount, or a relatively small project where it needs to go to a person on their team. So you can have both options, either automation or assigning an approver each and every time you want to put that data down. Now, of course, once we have the invoices approved, then what I'm going to do here is give a confirmation for this US Steel. And as I mentioned, I have no other open tasks. for this on this system. I did all of my processes, but you may have realized that each and every time I hit confirm and close out that invoice, I had additional numbers popping up on my listing option here. What this means is that my application, all of the invoices that I've been processing, have been rolling up to a ready to export booking file. And this is really important because as you do all of your data collection, you're storing your information with DocuWare, we're doing all of these indexing tools, and we also implemented this workflow to help your team make decisions a little bit faster and easier. But now we've collected all of that data and made it easy for you to pass that over actually to your ERP or maybe your QuickBooks or your Sage, for an example. During the training process, what we'll do is teach your administrators to use our export tool. And this export tool is an easy connection that allows you to select multiple types of applications as well as different outputs for locations. So when I hit this perform export, it's going to give me a listing of all of the transactions that I did this particular day, this particular week. All of that is up to your team and how you do your remittance at the end of the day. As we wrap up, I do want to spend just a few more minutes highlighting our search capabilities. As we all know, searching for records that are already filed away can be pretty tedious. With DocuWare, however, we can dramatically reduce the amount of time and effort it takes to find some of your documents. You'll notice when I go to the search categorization here, I have a long listing of selections. The best part about our filtration system is that everything is running in real time. What I mean by that is if I make a selection on the document type and I select invoices in, it already ran a search for me and it's now pulling only from that category of a document type. So as I go through and look at other fields, it's eliminating other documents that are not relative or pulling from that invoice category. So simply, once your team gets used to this process, they can use this drop-down filtration system and literally find that needle in a haystack, as they say. Similar to our other capabilities, all of these headers on the left-hand side can also be customized. So if you have particular language or additional data that you like to collect from a particular invoice, you don't have to only rely on our default searches. You can, of course, add some flexibility and personalization to that as well. So once again, today was a really high-level introduction to the application. There are several features and services we did not get a chance to introduce, but ultimately, we hope that this is enough to spark some interest and take some time to learn a little bit more about how DocuWare can help you in your organization. Is to really give you a bird's eye view and a better understanding of all of the processes that we can take. During the implementation process, we're going to be really hands-on, so we're going to help your team understand best practices, ways that they can leverage our technology. But the key thing is simplifying your day-to-day efforts and leveraging all of the things that we have existing within the platform so you can have an incredibly fast and easy rollout. But for the most part, we thank you for your time today. Obviously, I'm going to pass it back over to Nicole for any final questions, but we do hope we get a chance to talk to you down the road as well. Thanks again.
All right, Sal, yeah, thank you for that first look at the solution. We just have a few wrap-up slides here before Q&A that I wanted to get into. I do have also a poll question. So, you just saw a first look at DocuWare invoice processing. So what are you interested in? What features are you interested in learning more about? Just wanted to get a take on, what you saw, what you're interested in. You can go ahead now on your screen. You'll see, you can select more than one option. Just wait till I get a majority of votes and then I'll share my screen. Also, again, this is being recorded later today. I'll email you the link to the recording, the slides, the handouts in your GoToWebinar panel, and the handout of the bird's eye view of all the processes that will be included in the follow-up email as well. All right, looks like we got a good amount of votes. I will share the results now so everyone can see. Definitely the ready to go workflows and integrating with other solutions. Looks like everyone's interested in what we're seeing here. We're glad. We hope you reach out to your DocuWare partner or to DocuWare. We'll get the ball rolling on this. So let's go to the next few slides here. So Going over, just here you can see our security certifications. We also have a lot of good DocuWare software user reviews on sites like G2 Crowd and Capterra. I'll include a link to that in the follow-up email as well, so you can read about real users and their experiences using DocuWare. Just want to give you a quick overview. You know, DocuWare is used in over 100 countries in any size industry, you know, for any process. We hope that, you know, we can take the next step with you and work with you, you know, with starting out with AP, but, you know, we can also expand from there. Here's actually a quote from a case study in your handout section. Conrad, they're an auto parts company. They implemented DocuWare for invoice processing. They initially needed it to make sure that their invoices or documents were secure, but then the pre-configured workflows took took the system to the next level. So definitely take a read, look at that. I'll include that in the email as well. As we close out, you know, let's think about what's your next move. We hope you know, go forward, take the next step and save time and money, increase efficiency, protect against fraud, be able to invest in the technology today so that you can innovate and grow with ease into the future. We hope you don't, you know, stay on the left where you don't do anything. You could be, you know, maybe potentially wasting more time and money than is necessary. So just a question to think about as we wrap up here. So there's ways to get in touch for the next step. If you're already working with your authorized DocuWare partner, definitely reach out to them to set up a call, or you can reach us at docuware.com/demo or email us anytime with any thoughts or question at contact.us@docuware.com. Um, let's see, I had a comment that my slides were not advancing. Sal, can you see this for the slides good?
Yes, we're up to date now.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. All right, yes. So to kick off Q&A, we have some questions here. We do have time scheduled till 2:45, but if anyone, you know, you need to head out, we'll definitely email you the recording and documents afterwards. So let's see. Someone asked, are there different levels of security? Can a staff member enter a purchase order and for the manager director to approve? I guess kind of like custom user access rights is what they're asking about.
Yes, and absolutely. We can set that up through filing cabinet or particular record. We just need your guidance on who those people are, what steps they can take, but we can set up multiple ways of user permissions for sure.
Great. And then next question is the invoice a file type that is compatible with most users when sending from DocuWare to recipient, for example, PDF format?
So I'm not following the question fully, but I will say when something is stored within the DocuWare system, it turns that record into a PDF and you can export it as a PDF as well. So no matter how the record came in, you can send it outbound as a PDF for security purposes as well.
Okay, got it. I think that's what I got from it as well. Someone's asking let me see. Someone's asking what ERPs is DocuWare compatible with, where they can get more information on that. I guess you have a general response to like what other solutions this can integrate with.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have the more popular options like your QuickBooks, your Sage, your Dynamics GP, but we can also follow up with our integration list. We do have that online that shows a breakdown of all of the type of applications that we connect with, which will include ERPs as well.
Okay, yes, I'll send a link to that for the person that asked that. Let's see. Are export formats completely adjustable?
Yes, during the implementation portion, you'll be sitting down obviously with a team member that's going to give you more insight, best practices, and that's something you'll be able to hash out in detail. How that looks, what type of connections that you're making, and what type of headers that you're using, all shaped during the implementation part.
Great. I think this might be related to like integration, but someone's asking, we use both Sage Accounting and sounds like Meditech Expanse software. Can the system easily identify documents that will pertain to either?
That's probably a more detailed question that you want to have a follow-up conversation with. I don't think I have to look a little bit deeper into what type of result they're looking for. So unfortunately, that might need a detailed conversation before we give an answer on that one.
Gotcha. There's also we'll reach out, but also too, if any further questions after the session, you can contact your DocuWare partner or reach out to us at contact.us@docuware.com and we'll put you in touch with the right representative. Let's see. Does DocuWare, this might seem like a general DocuWare question, does DocuWare have any security notifications for administrations? For instance, a large amount of files maybe were deleted or downloaded by a user.
That's a good question, actually. I want to say we can most likely obviously set permissions to prevent those actions.
Yeah,
Got that pretty early.
right.
We do have a pretty extensive audit trail on each and every record. So even if I open it up and add an annotation line, I'll have a track record for that. So I'm not sure if there's an alert. We could probably figure out the alert system, but you'll easily be able to see who pulled them, when they pulled them, and what records they pulled.
Yeah, like I'm thinking because you set up permissions in advance for
It'll
someone to be able to delete a large amount of files, that would probably only be the administrator who could do that.
correct. Nine times
So
out of 10, correct.
yeah, but that's where like the permissions come into play to prevent that kind of like security like emergency, I would think. Um, can you initiate a workflow with a task versus a document? Or just how
Um,
do you initiate a workflow? Is it only one particular way, or can it kind of be any sort of trigger, is what I'm getting from that?
Yeah, with the workflows that we have built into this demo for invoice processing, it is going to be initiated by that invoice and/or document that's starting a workflow. However, again, highly customizable. Today we're focusing high level on today's solution, but we can obviously talk about that offline as well and some of the ways we can help.
Right. Okay, let's see. Other question. How granular can the indexing and workflows be?
Yeah, so the
Um,
the indexing tool is really up to you. Some of the examples that we use on the left side of that panel, that's just a default breakdown of what we're collecting. During the implementation part, you can give us a full list. If you have, 20 to 30 additional things that you want collected, we can build that in to the indexing tool. For workflows, that can also get incredibly complex. We have some companies that have 2 people involved in the workflow and others that have 15. And depending on who says yes and who says no, it can trigger a different action within that workflow. For today, once again, we just covered some of the default aspects, but we can customize that pretty heavily as well.
right. Okay. Yeah. The second part of that question was, can the indexing and workflows be set up to break out individual service costs for separate approvals and GL allocation?
So we do have a multi-approval process where we can send that same invoice to different departments. I have to double check to see how we can split it up. If he wants that data to be populated in different areas, that might take a little bit of effort from implementation. So we can get back to him on that to see how difficult that will be to set up.
Yep. All right. Yes, we'll forward your question to the appropriate rep to follow up. Looks like we are at the time now. So if we didn't get to your question, we will definitely follow up. Again, if you look on your screen, there's different ways you can continue the conversation with us. We hope to hear from you. If you have any, questions or just maybe comments or thoughts, or you're not really sure what you want to ask or what you want to see, feel free to just reach out and we'll definitely point you in the right direction. So, all right, I think that's it. Thank you, Sal, for the insights and the first look demo at the solution. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today and your questions. Look out for an email from me later today. I hope everyone has a great, safe, and healthy holiday season, and we'll talk to you soon and we'll have our next webinar will be January 25th. You'll receive an email from me on that. All right, everyone. Thank you. Take care.